A good day and a warm welcome to everybody here. I'm Jim Martin. I'm president of the 60 Plus Association, and I'm happy you're with us here today at the National Press Club. And we have live coverage on television, so we want to welcome all the seniors out there across the country, and especially those baby boomers who are just around the corner, and that's part of the problem. A lot of future retirees just around the corner. You know, we're celebrating the 72nd birthday of a great system that has served senior citizens, including yours truly, so well. But after 72 years, well, the system is showing signs of the aging process. After all, a car in 1935 would be 72 years old, probably had some new tires, maybe a new battery, maybe at least it got recharged once or twice. You know, by the way, gasoline back in those days was maybe 10 cents a gallon. Now it's $3 a gallon. Well, the same with the Social Security system. It was about $5 a month back in those days to finance the system. Now it's over $1,000 a month, and it still isn't quite getting the job done. Well, former Congressman J.C. Watts from Oklahoma, a former football great, Congressman Watts once referred to Social Security reform as the Super Bowl of domestic policy issues. Why did he say that? Well, because from the 1960s forward, it's been the third rail of politics. Touch it and you die. And let me digress for just a second here. When I came to this town in 1962 as a young newspaper reporter, working in this very building here in the National Press Club, on the horizon was a guy named Barry Goldwater who ran for president in 1964. He didn't put out a position paper on Social Security, but he was asked once in the snows of New Hampshire about the system. And Barry said, well, structurally, something has to be done because the system's going to go broke. Well, let me put it this way. Was Barry ahead of his time? Yes, he was, because the first recipient of the very first check on Social Security was a retired school teacher from Vermont named Ida Mae Fuller. Ida Mae Fuller paid about $22 into the system. She got out 20-some thousands of dollars. But here's the problem, you see. Back when the system started, Bismarck, I guess, in Germany in the 1800s, the actuarial tables showed that we seniors died, as someone put it, conveniently at about 65. Well, the problem is, you see, Ida Mae Fuller did not conveniently die at 65. This retired school teacher lived to be 99 years old. So maybe Barry Goldwater knew what was on the horizon, who knows. But that's part of the problem, and in fact, I've got to digress here another second. The good news, of course, is that we seniors are living longer, fuller, more productive lives into our 80s and 90s and beyond. Talking to a gentleman here earlier, his uncle is 104 years old. My stepfather died at 105 a year or so ago. My favorite senior, my mom, at age 88, passed away a couple of years ago. By the way, she depended on her Social Security check as part of her income. But and our honorary chairman is the Honorable Roger Zion, a great congressman from Evansville, Indiana, who served here in the 60s and 70s. He came to Congress with a young freshman congressman from Houston named George Herbert Walker Bush. Congressman Zion is 85, lives in Evansville, and as Roger says, he says, I've been statistically dead now for 20 years. But that, of course, is the problem, is the younger folks have to pay for the system. Well, this is a system that has served seniors well, and as I like to point out, President Bush did what no previous president has ever done in my 40-some years in this town. He boldly called for reform of this system that has served seniors well, but now, according to a majority of citizens, it's in need of an overhaul. But to what degree does it need overhauling? Well, that's the $64,000 question. Perhaps it's the $600 billion question. As someone's pointed out, that's what's being added every year until the system is overhauled. Today in this forum, which the 60 Plus Association, this is our 11th annual event designed to bring to the public a better understanding of the system signed into law 72 years ago by President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We have a great panel today, but first I want to thank a few folks who've helped make 60 Plus the success it is. We're in our 15th year now. A couple of folks here today, Amy Noon Frederick, Ed Fulgeniti, others who are not here today, Mary Mahoney, the late Hugh Newton, who was a friend of 40 years, who helped us immensely, and the late board member John Manerick, and our current board members, Prather McKinnon and Bob Martin. I did mention Roger Zine. I got to mention one other person, our honorary spokesman, none other than Pat Boone. Yes, the original American Idol, 50 years of show business. Let me now tell you how I got involved in this. My favorite senior I mentioned a minute ago, my mom. She said to me a few years ago when we were talking about this system and what was happening, and now that a majority of folks around the country say we got to do something to fix it, my mom said to me, son, my most valuable assets are, of course, my Social Security check. She was still working into her 80s, but my other assets are my children and my grandchildren. So you got to do something about this system. I'd end on this note. Some 24 countries back in 1995, the first year that we stuck our toe in the water, touching the third rail and to see if we're going to be electrocuted or not, 24 countries around the globe have started moving toward this personalized system. Now about 40 countries a dozen years later. So I think it is the wave of the future. And before I call on our first panelist, I would quote some Democrats, some leading Democrats now, who had the Hyde Park Declaration about 7 years ago. About 100 elected Democrats, including 5 U.S. senators, adopted a manifesto at FDR's mansion in Hyde Park. And what they said was something along the lines of the following, and I quote directly: "We believe in shifting the focus of America's social insurance programs from transferring wealth to creating wealth." They went on to write that the cost of the big entitlements for the elderly, Social Security and Medicare, are growing at rates that will eventually bankrupt them, and that could leave little to pay for everything else that government does. We can't just spend our way out of the problem, these Democrats said. We must find a way to contain future growth. Well, President Bush and other reformers have put into play a number of cost containment options, from slowing the scheduled benefit increases for wealthier retirees to gradually raising the retirement age from 65 to, I think it's going to 67 now. But all of these are keeping with these new Democrats' vow to enact, quote, structural reforms that will restrain the growth in cost and, as they said, limit their claim on the working families whose taxes support the programs. This kind of reform is needed, these Democrats said, to respond to conditions not envisioned 72 years ago when FDR created the system.